The security footage is only 17 seconds in duration, but those 17 seconds have been viewed millions of times, analyzed frame by frame, and have become one of the most chilling pieces of surveillance video ever captured. On July 8, 2016, at Miami International Airport, cameras recorded a young man sprinting through the terminal in absolute panic, his face twisted in terror, running as if his life depended on it. 28-year-old Michael Roberts had been scheduled to board a flight home to Seattle that morning, the final leg of what should have been a relaxing beach vacation in Florida. Instead, security cameras captured him bursting from the airport medical clinic, racing through the departure terminal, pushing past startled travelers, and running straight through the sliding glass doors into the morning heat. The last frame shows him vaulting over a security fence and disappearing into the dense vegetation beyond the airport perimeter. Michael Roberts has not been seen or heard from since. What happened in the days leading up to that terrifying sprint? What transformed a healthy, rational young man into someone so consumed by fear that he would abandon everything, his luggage, his wallet, his phone, his ticket home, and flee into the unknown? Was he running from something real, or had his mind betrayed him in the cruelest possible way? The investigation that followed would uncover a disturbing sequence of events, reveal a mysterious incident that changed Michael completely, and expose questions that remain unanswered to this day. Dozens of supposed sightings, countless theories, and years of searching have yielded no concrete answers about what became of Michael Roberts after he vanished into the Florida wilderness. Before we explore the full story of what happened to Michael Roberts, make sure you're subscribed to our channel and hit that notification bell. This case has captivated investigators and true crime enthusiasts around the world, not just because of the dramatic footage, but because it reminds us how quickly a vacation can turn into a nightmare, and how someone can seemingly vanish without a trace in broad daylight. This is the story of Michael Roberts, a young man with everything to live for, and the vacation that ended with 17 seconds of pure terror caught on camera. In the summer of 2016, Michael James Roberts was 28 years old and living in Seattle, Washington, where he worked as a software engineer for a mid-sized tech company. Standing 6 feet 1 inch tall with sandy blonde hair, blue-green eyes, and an athletic build maintained through regular running and cycling, Michael had the appearance of someone who took care of himself, both physically and mentally. Michael had grown up in Portland, Oregon, as the only child of David and Linda Roberts. His father worked as a civil engineer, while his mother was a high school English teacher. The Roberts family had always been close-knit, with Michael maintaining strong ties to his parents even after moving to Seattle for work in 2013. He called home every Sunday without fail, a tradition that made what came next all the more devastating for his family. From an early age, Michael had displayed a natural aptitude for mathematics and technology. He had excelled academically throughout school, graduating with honors from Oregon State University in 2010 with a degree in computer science. His professors remembered him as diligent, curious, and remarkably level-headed, qualities that would make his later behavior all the more inexplicable. After college, Michael had worked for several tech companies in the Pacific Northwest before landing his position at CloudSync Solutions in Seattle. His colleagues described him as reliable, intelligent, and easy to work with. He was the kind of person who stayed late to help debug someone else's code, who remembered birthdays, and organized team happy hours, who could be counted on in both professional and personal capacities. Outside of work, Michael was an avid outdoorsman. He spent his weekends hiking in the Cascade Mountains, kayaking on Puget Sound, and exploring the natural beauty of the Pacific Northwest. He was physically fit, mentally sharp, and had no history of mental health issues, substance abuse, or concerning behavior. By all accounts, Michael Roberts was a stable, healthy, well-adjusted 28-year-old with a promising career and a good life. Michael's social life was active but not excessive. He had a close circle of friends from college who had also settled in the Seattle area, including his best friend since freshman year, Jason Taylor. Michael had been in a relationship with his girlfriend, Sarah Thompson, for 2 years, and friends said the couple was happy and talking about moving in together. Sarah, who worked as a graphic designer, later told investigators that Michael had never given her any reason to worry about his mental state or his judgment. In early June 2016, Michael and 3 of his friends, Jason Taylor, Christopher Martinez, and Andrew Wilson, decided to plan a week-long vacation to Miami Beach, Florida. The trip was meant to be a celebration of sorts. All 4 men had recently received promotions at their respective companies, and they wanted to take advantage of the summer weather to relax, enjoy the beach, and decompress from the demands of their jobs. The plan was straightforward. Fly to Miami on June 30th, spend a week staying at a beachfront rental property, enjoy the sun and nightlife, and fly back to Seattle on July 8th. Michael had been particularly excited about the trip, looking forward to spending time with his closest friends and experiencing a different part of the country. He had saved up vacation days specifically for this trip and had researched restaurants, bars, and activities for the group to enjoy. On June 28th, 2 days before the trip, Michael had dinner with his parents at their Portland home. Linda Roberts later recalled that her son had been in excellent spirits, talking enthusiastically about the upcoming vacation and joking about needing to buy more sunscreen because he was dangerously pale from too many months of Seattle rain. David Roberts remembered hugging his son goodbye and feeling nothing but happiness that Michael was taking time to enjoy life with. His friends? Michael's personality was characterized by practical thinking and measured responses to challenges. He wasn't impulsive or reckless. He didn't take unnecessary risks. He was the friend who made sure everyone had a designated driver, who double-checked that doors were locked, who kept track of important documents and flight times. His friends often joked that Michael had an old soul because of his responsible nature. On the morning of June 30th, Michael met Jason, Christopher, and Andrew at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport for their 11:45 in the morning flight to Miami. Security footage from SeaTac shows the 4 friends laughing and joking as they went through security, completely at ease and excited for the week ahead. Michael was wearing cargo shorts, a Seattle Seahawks t-shirt, and carrying a black backpack with his laptop and other essentials. He looked healthy, happy, and normal in every conceivable way. The flight to Miami was uneventful. The Preeti group arrived at Miami International Airport at 8:30 in the evening Eastern Time, picked up their rental car, and drove to their beachfront property in Miami Beach. They unpacked, went out for a late dinner at a seafood restaurant, and returned to the rental around midnight to get some rest before starting their vacation properly the next day. Michael Roberts was a man who approached life with intelligence, caution, and good judgment. He had no history of erratic behavior, no underlying health conditions, no reasons for anyone who knew him to suspect that something could go terribly wrong. He was the kind of person who should have had many more vacations ahead of him, many more Sunday phone calls with his parents, many more years with Sarah and his friends. But in the span of just 8 days, something would happen to Michael Roberts that would transform him from a stable, rational young man into someone consumed by inexplicable terror. And on the morning of July 8th, 2016, security cameras at Miami International Airport would capture the moment when Michael Roberts ran for his life and vanished into a mystery that continues to haunt everyone who knew him and everyone who has seen those 17 seconds of footage. The first 4 days of the Miami vacation unfolded exactly as planned. From July 1st through July 4th, Michael Roberts and his 3 friends enjoyed everything Miami Beach had to offer. Security footage and credit card records paint a picture of a normal group vacation. The 4 men spent their days on the beach, their evenings at restaurants and bars, and their nights back at the rental property. On July 1st, the group spent most of the day at South Beach, swimming in the Atlantic Ocean, playing volleyball, and soaking up the Florida sun. Michael posted a photo to his Instagram that afternoon showing all 4 friends with the beach behind them, captioned, "Finally escaped the Seattle rain. This is the life." Sarah commented on the photo with heart emojis, and Michael's mother, Linda, left a comment saying, "Have fun, be safe." July 2nd and 3rd followed similar patterns. The men explored Miami's Art Deco district, visited the Wynwood Walls, and tried various Cuban restaurants that Jason had researched before the trip. Michael seemed completely normal in every way. Photos from these days show him smiling, relaxed, and enjoying himself. He texted Sarah regularly, sent his parents updates, and showed no signs of distress or unusual behavior. On July 4th, Independence Day, the group decided to watch the fireworks from a beachfront bar called the Tiki Lounge. The bar was crowded with tourists and locals celebrating the holiday, with music blasting and drinks flowing freely. Credit card receipts show the 4 friends purchased food and drinks throughout the evening, staying at the Tiki Lounge from approximately 7 o'clock in the evening until just after midnight. It was during this evening that everything changed. According to statements Jason Taylor, Christopher Martinez, and Andrew Wilson later gave to police, sometime around 10:30 in the evening, Michael went to the bathroom. When he didn't return after 15 minutes, the friends assumed he had stepped outside for fresh air or to take a phone call. But at 11:07 in the evening, Michael came back to their table with blood trickling from his left ear and visible bruising beginning to form on the left side of his face and neck. When his friends asked what had happened, Michael's account was confusing and agitated. He claimed that he had been attacked in the bathroom by 4 or 5 guys who had accused him of looking at them wrong. He said they had pushed him against the wall, punched him several times, and that one of them had said something threatening that he couldn't quite remember. But Michael insisted he didn't want to call the police or go to the hospital. He just wanted to leave the bar immediately. The friends were concerned, but complied with Michael's wishes. They left the Tiki Lounge at 11:23 in the evening and took an Uber back to their rental property. During the ride, Michael was quiet and kept touching his injured ear, wincing in pain. Once back at the rental, Jason examined Michael's injuries and noted that while the bruising looked bad, there was no active bleeding except for a small amount from the ear canal. Jason, Christopher, and Andrew all urged Michael to go to the emergency room to get checked out, particularly because of the ear bleeding, which could indicate something more serious than a simple punch. But Michael refused adamantly. He said he was fine, that he just needed to sleep it off, and that he didn't want to spend their vacation sitting in a hospital. Reluctantly, his friends agreed to monitor him overnight and insisted that if he felt worse in the morning, they would take him to a doctor. That night marked the beginning of Michael's descent into paranoia and fear. On the morning of July 5th, Michael woke up complaining of a severe headache and ringing in his left ear. His friends convinced him to at least visit an urgent care clinic to get examined. At 10:47 in the morning, the group arrived at Miami Beach Urgent Care, where Michael was evaluated by Dr. Patricia Moore, a physician assistant. Dr. Moore's medical notes from that visit later obtained by investigators, indicate that Michael had a ruptured eardrum, bruising consistent with blunt force trauma, and complained of dizziness and headache. Dr. Moore recommended that Michael go to a hospital for a CT scan to rule out any brain injury, but Michael refused. He told Dr. Moore he had a flight home in 3 days, and he just wanted medication for the pain and something to help him sleep. Dr. Moore prescribed pain medication and antibiotics to prevent infection in the damaged ear, warned Michael about signs of concussion to watch for, and made him promise to seek emergency care if his symptoms worsened. She also wrote in her notes that Michael seemed anxious and somewhat paranoid, asking multiple times if anyone had followed them to the clinic. Over the next 2 days, July 5th and 6th, Michael's behavior became increasingly concerning to his friends. He barely left the rental property, claiming he didn't feel safe going out. When the others went to the beach or to restaurants, Michael stayed behind, saying his head hurt too much. But Jason later told investigators that it seemed like more than just physical pain. Michael appeared genuinely frightened. On the evening of July 5th, Michael called his mother Linda in Portland. The conversation lasted 47 minutes, unusually long for Michael's typical check-ins. Linda later recalled that Michael had sounded off. He was rambling, repeating himself, and kept insisting that someone was watching him. When Linda pressed him for details, Michael became vague and defensive. She urged him to see a doctor, but Michael said he had already been to urgent care and was fine. Linda went to bed that night with a gnawing sense of unease, but told herself that Michael was probably just shaken up from the assault and would feel better once he was home. On July 6th, Michael's paranoia escalated dramatically. He told his friends that he believed the men who had attacked him at the Tiki Lounge were staying in a room somewhere in their rental building. He claimed he had seen one of them in the parking lot that morning, though when Christopher looked out the window, there was no one there. Michael insisted they needed to keep the doors locked at all times and began refusing to let anyone into the property, even the cleaning service. That afternoon, Jason found Michael standing at the window, peering through the blinds at the parking lot below. When Jason asked what he was doing, Michael said he was keeping watch and that they needed to be careful. Jason later described this moment as genuinely unsettling. The look in Michael's eyes was one of absolute conviction and fear. On July 7th, with only 1 day left before their scheduled flight home, Michael's 3 friends made a difficult decision. Jason, Christopher, and Andrew decided they would fly home on July 7th instead of July 8th as originally planned. They were increasingly worried about Michael's mental state and felt out of their depth trying to help him. They suggested Michael come with them, but Michael refused, saying he needed to stay an extra day because he had to figure something out first. The friends later expressed tremendous guilt about this decision. They felt they should have insisted Michael come with them, or stayed with him, or called his parents, or taken him to a hospital. But in the moment, with Michael adamant that he was fine and that he just needed 1 more day, they made the choice to leave. At 2:15 in the afternoon, on July 7th, Jason, Christopher, and Andrew departed for Miami International Airport, leaving Michael alone at the rental property. It was the last time any of them would see their friend. Before they left, Jason gave Michael a tight hug and made him promise to call as soon as he landed in Seattle the next day. Michael promised he would. On the morning of July 8, 2016, Michael Roberts was scheduled to depart Miami on a 10:45 in the morning flight to Seattle. His friends had been texting him since the previous evening, checking on him and reminding him about the flight. Michael had responded to a text from Jason at 11:32 in the evening on July 7th, saying simply, "I'm okay. See you guys soon." At 6:47 in the morning on July 8th, airport security cameras captured Michael arriving at Miami International Airport in a taxi. He was wearing the same clothing his friends had last seen him in: cargo shorts, a wrinkled t-shirt, and sneakers, and was carrying his black backpack. But even in the grainy security footage, it was apparent that something was very wrong. Michael's movements were jerky and paranoid. He kept looking over his shoulder, spinning around to check behind him, and walking in erratic patterns through the terminal. At 7:15 in the morning, Michael approached the check-in counter for his flight. The airline employee who assisted him, Marcus Johnson, later told investigators that Michael seemed extremely agitated and distressed. Michael kept asking Marcus if anyone had been asking about him, if anyone had tried to access his booking information, and whether it was possible for someone to track which flight he was on. Marcus assured him that passenger information was confidential, but Michael didn't seem reassured. After checking his luggage, Michael went through security at 7:42 in the morning. TSA agents reported nothing unusual about the screening process, though one agent noted that Michael appeared nervous and sweaty, which they attributed to typical travel anxiety. Once through security, Michael should have proceeded to his gate D17, for his 10:45 in the morning departure. But instead, security footage shows him wandering the terminal aimlessly for nearly an hour. He would walk toward his gate, then suddenly turn around and walk in the opposite direction. He sat down in a seating area, then stood up moments later. He went into a bathroom and came out almost immediately. At 9:03 in the morning, Michael entered the airport medical clinic located in the central terminal area. The clinic's security camera shows him speaking to the receptionist, who then directed him to a small examination room. Dr. James Wilson, the physician on duty that morning, later provided a statement about what transpired during Michael's visit. According to Dr. Wilson, Michael came to the clinic complaining of severe ear pain and requesting more pain medication. Dr. Wilson examined Michael's ruptured eardrum and noted that while it was healing, Michael appeared to be in significant distress beyond what the physical injury would explain. When Dr. Wilson asked about other symptoms, Michael became paranoid and started talking rapidly about being followed, about dangerous people trying to find him, about needing to get home immediately. Dr. Wilson became concerned that Michael was experiencing a psychiatric emergency, possibly a psychotic break. He tried to calm Michael down and suggested they call someone, family, friends, or emergency services. But this seemed to panic Michael even more. At 9:37 in the morning, Michael abruptly stood up from the examination table and said he needed to leave right away. What happened next was captured on multiple security cameras and would become one of the most viewed pieces of surveillance footage in true crime history. At 9:38 in the morning, Michael burst out of the medical clinic examination room, moving at a near run. The clinic's camera shows him pushing past the receptionist's desk and exiting into the main terminal. Terminal cameras then captured Michael breaking into a full sprint, his face contorted in absolute terror, his backpack bouncing against his shoulders as he ran. Michael ran through the departure terminal, weaving between travelers, knocking into a luggage cart, and causing several people to jump out of his way. Multiple witnesses later described the look on his face as pure panic and like he was running for his life. Security footage shows Michael glancing behind him repeatedly as he ran, though no one appeared to be chasing him. At 9:39 in the morning, Michael reached the terminal's glass sliding doors that led outside to the departure pickup area. Without breaking stride, he ran straight through the opening doors and out into the hot July morning. External cameras captured him, continuing to run at full speed across the departure lanes, causing cars to brake suddenly and heading toward the perimeter of the airport property. The final frame of security footage shows Michael Roberts reaching the chain-link fence that marked the boundary between the airport grounds and the undeveloped land beyond. In one fluid motion, Michael jumped, grabbed the top of the 8-foot fence, pulled himself up and over, and dropped down on the other side. The last image ever captured of Michael Roberts shows him running into the dense vegetation, a mixture of palmetto scrub, pine trees, and thick undergrowth that characterize the area surrounding the airport, and disappearing from view. Airport security was immediately alerted. Officers arrived at the fence line within 4 minutes of Michael's escape. But by the time they reached the area where he had jumped the fence, Michael had vanished completely into the wilderness. Police were called at 9:46 in the morning, and a search of the area was initiated within the hour. But Miami International Airport is surrounded by vast stretches of undeveloped land, parts of which connect to the Everglades ecosystem. Finding one person in that terrain was like searching for a needle in a haystack. Michael's backpack, wallet, phone, and passport were found abandoned in different locations during the initial search. His backpack was discovered approximately 200 yards from the fence, its contents scattered. His wallet was found near a drainage ditch. His phone, which had been turned off, was located in the underbrush half a mile from where he had jumped the fence. It was as if Michael had systematically discarded everything that could identify him or allow him to be tracked. The last ping from Michael's phone, before it was powered down, was at 9:41 in the morning, just 2 minutes after his sprint through the terminal. After that, Michael Roberts effectively ceased to exist in any way that could be traced through modern technology or surveillance. The notification Michael's parents received at 11:47 in the morning that day, informing them that their son had missed his flight and had last been seen running from the airport in an apparent state of panic, began the nightmare that continues for the Roberts family to this day. The search for Michael Roberts began within hours of his disappearance and quickly became one of the largest missing persons operations in Miami-Dade County history. On July 8, 2016, the day of Michael's vanishing, over 50 law enforcement officers, search and rescue teams, and K-9 units combed through the wilderness surrounding Miami International Airport. The terrain was brutal. The area where Michael had disappeared consisted of dense palmetto scrub, sawgrass, standing water in places, and temperatures that climbed into the high 90s by midday. Search dogs tracked Michael's scent from the fence line for approximately 3/4 of a mile before losing the trail near a drainage canal. Whether Michael had entered the water, whether the scent had simply dissipated in the heat and humidity, or whether something else had happened remained unclear. By July 9th, the search had expanded to include helicopters equipped with thermal imaging cameras and drones mapping the area from above. But the dense vegetation and water features made aerial surveillance challenging. Miami-Dade Police spokesperson Detective Jennifer Martinez told reporters that they were pursuing every possible lead, but acknowledged that the vast, unforgiving terrain was making the search extraordinarily difficult. Michael's parents, David and Linda Roberts, arrived in Miami on July 9th, devastated and desperate. They held a press conference on July 10th, pleading for anyone with information to come forward and begging Michael, if he could hear them, to please contact them or police. Linda Roberts broke down multiple times during the conference, saying through tears that they just wanted their son home safely, and that they loved him no matter what was happening. As days turned to weeks without any sign of Michael, the investigation began to shift focus. Detectives started examining the incident at the Tiki Lounge on July 4th more closely. They reviewed security footage from the bar, which showed Michael entering the bathroom at 10:31 in the evening and exiting at 10:58 in the evening, a 27-minute gap. The footage also showed 4 men entering the bathroom shortly after Michael, and the same 4 men leaving approximately 15 minutes later. Police identified 3 of the 4 men from the footage and interviewed them extensively. All 3 claimed they had been in the bathroom at the same time as Michael, but denied any altercation. They said they hadn't even noticed him. The 4th man was never definitively identified, though investigators pursued several leads. Without Michael to provide his account, and without any witnesses to what happened inside that bathroom, the truth of the incident remained murky. Medical experts who reviewed Michael's case offered various theories about what might have caused his dramatic behavioral change and eventual flight from the airport. Dr. Robert Chen, a neurologist consulted by the investigation, suggested that the ruptured eardrum and reported blows to the head could have caused a subdural hematoma, bleeding in the brain, which could lead to confusion, paranoia, and irrational behavior. However, without having examined Michael directly or having imaging studies, this remained speculation. Dr. Lisa Morgan, a psychiatrist specializing in trauma, proposed that Michael might have experienced a psychotic break triggered by a combination of factors: the physical trauma from the assault, possible concussion, sleep deprivation, stress, and perhaps an underlying vulnerability to mental health, issues that had never manifested before. She noted that first-episode psychosis often emerges in people in their late 20s and can be triggered by stressful events or physical injury. Another theory that gained traction, particularly online, was that Michael had been drugged at the Tiki Lounge. Toxicology experts pointed out that certain substances, particularly some benzodiazepines and hallucinogens, could cause the paranoia and erratic behavior Michael displayed. If someone had slipped something into his drink, it could explain both his confused account of the bathroom incident and his subsequent deterioration. However, without being able to test Michael's blood, this theory remained unproven. As the search continued with diminishing intensity through late July and into August 2016, supposed sightings of Michael began to emerge. A gas station attendant in Homestead, about 30 miles south of Miami, reported seeing a man matching Michael's description on July 12th, acting strangely and asking for water. A homeless shelter in Fort Lauderdale reported a young man who resembled Michael staying there for 2 nights in mid-July, but he left before anyone could confirm his identity. In September 2016, a hiker in Everglades National Park reported finding a T-shirt matching the description of what Michael had been wearing, but DNA testing proved inconclusive. The shirt had been too degraded by exposure to definitively link it to Michael. Each potential sighting and each piece of potential evidence ultimately led nowhere. The 17 seconds of security footage showing Michael's terrified sprint through the airport terminal became international news. The video was shared millions of times on social media, featured on true crime television programs, and analyzed extensively by amateur investigators online. Reddit forums dedicated to Michael's case accumulated thousands of posts, with users proposing theories ranging from plausible to outlandish. Some online theorists suggested that Michael had actually been running from real danger, that the men from the Tiki Lounge were part of a criminal organization, perhaps drug traffickers, who had targeted Michael for unknown reasons and were genuinely pursuing him. Others proposed that Michael had witnessed something at the bar that he shouldn't have seen, making him a liability that needed to be eliminated. More skeptical analysts focused on the medical explanations, piecing together timelines of Michael's declining mental state and arguing that he was clearly experiencing a psychiatric emergency that had nothing to do with external threats. They pointed to the fact that security footage showed no one pursuing Michael, that his friends reported increasingly paranoid behavior, and that medical professionals who saw him noted his agitated, fearful state. By the first anniversary of Michael's disappearance in July 2017, the active search had long since concluded, though the case remained officially open. Michael's family continued to search, returning to Florida multiple times to distribute flyers, conduct their own investigations, and keep Michael's case in the public eye. Sarah Thompson, Michael's girlfriend, later told interviewers that the not knowing was the worst part, that without closure, she found herself frozen, unable to fully grieve or move forward. On November 3, 2018, more than 2 years after, Michael Roberts disappeared. A discovery was made that would reignite the investigation and finally provide some answers, though not the ones his family had been hoping for. 2 environmental researchers from the University of Miami, Dr. Amanda Wilson and her graduate assistant Carlos Mendez, were conducting a wildlife survey in a remote area of wetlands approximately 8 miles northwest of Miami International Airport. The location was part of a conservation area that connected to the larger Everglades ecosystem, accessible only by airboat or by hiking through extremely difficult terrain. At approximately 2:30 in the afternoon, while documenting bird species near a small hammock, a slightly elevated island of trees in the wetland, Carlos noticed what appeared to be fabric caught in the roots of a mangrove tree. Upon closer inspection, they realized with horror that they had found human remains, partially submerged in the shallow water and heavily decomposed after years of exposure to the harsh environment. Miami-Dade police were contacted immediately, and a recovery team was dispatched to the location. The recovery operation took 2 days due to the remote location and the need to preserve any potential evidence. What investigators found were skeletal remains that had been scattered by wildlife and water movement, along with a few personal items that had somehow remained near the body. Among the items recovered was a distinctive metal watch that Michael's father, David, immediately identified when shown a photograph. The watch had been a graduation gift from David to Michael when he completed his degree at Oregon State University in 2010. It was engraved on the back with, "To Michael, the future is yours, Dad, 2010. There was no question that the remains were those of Michael Roberts. Forensic analysis conducted over the following weeks revealed crucial information about Michael's final hours. Dr. Patricia Moore, the chief medical examiner for Miami-Dade County, determined that Michael had died from drowning, though the exact circumstances were difficult to establish due to the advanced decomposition. The skeletal remains showed no signs of foul play, no fractures consistent with assault, no evidence of stabbing or shooting, no indicators that Michael had been restrained or physically harmed beyond the injuries he had sustained at the Tiki Lounge. What the investigation did reveal was the route Michael had taken after jumping the airport fence. By mapping the location where his belongings had been found and the location of his remains, investigators pieced together a path that showed Michael had traveled roughly 8 miles through some of the most inhospitable terrain in South Florida. He had moved northwest, away from developed areas, deeper into the wetlands. Investigators theorized that Michael, in his state of paranoid terror, had been trying to escape what he believed was a threat. He had systematically discarded items that could be used to track him: his phone, his wallet, his backpack, and had continued moving until he reached the wetland area. Whether he had entered the water intentionally or accidentally, whether he had been too exhausted to continue or had become disoriented in the unfamiliar terrain, the result was the same. Michael had drowned in approximately 3 feet of water in a remote area where his body would not be found for over 2 years. The IB toxicology analysis, though limited by the condition of the remains, did reveal one significant finding: traces of a benzodiazepine compound in bone marrow that suggested Michael had indeed been exposed to some form of sedative or anxiety medication. Whether this was from the medication prescribed by the urgent care clinic, from something he had taken on his own, or from being drugged without his knowledge, could not be definitively determined. In January 2019, Miami-Dade police held a press conference to announce their findings. Detective Martinez explained that while they believed Michael's death was accidental, a tragic result of his impaired mental state following the assault and possible head injury, certain aspects of the case would remain unresolved. They could not prove what had happened in the bathroom at the Tiki Lounge, could not definitively explain Michael's paranoia, and could not determine whether he had been drugged or was experiencing a psychotic break. What they could say with certainty was that Michael Roberts had died alone, afraid, and far from anyone who could help him. His desperate flight from the airport had taken him into terrain where survival was nearly impossible, especially for someone not in a rational state of mind. The very behavior that he believed would save him, running, hiding, discarding anything that could track him, had sealed his fate. Michael's family finally had the closure of knowing what had happened to their son. But that closure came with devastating knowledge. Linda Roberts told reporters through tears that the hardest part was knowing Michael had died believing he was in danger, that his final hours had been filled with terror, and that they hadn't been able to help him when he needed them most. The investigation into the July 4th incident at the Tiki Lounge was officially closed as unsolvable. Without Michael's testimony, without definitive evidence of assault, and without being able to identify or locate all the individuals involved, prosecutors determined there was insufficient evidence to bring charges against anyone. The bar itself faced no legal consequences, though the case did bring attention to security issues and the vulnerability of tourists in crowded nightlife areas. The case of Michael Roberts stands as one of the most tragic examples of how quickly a vacation can transform into a nightmare, and how a single incident can cascade into a fatal sequence of events. When investigators closed the case in early 2019, they concluded that Michael's death was accidental, the result of a perfect storm of physical injury, possible drugging, mental health crisis, and terrible decisions made while in an impaired state. The most likely scenario, based on all available evidence, is that Michael suffered a significant head injury during the bathroom incident at the Tiki Lounge on July 4th. Whether he was assaulted as he claimed, fell and hit his head, or was drugged and became disoriented, may never be definitively known. What is clear is that the ruptured eardrum was real, the bruising was documented, and something traumatic happened that night. Medical experts who reviewed the case posthumously believe Michael likely developed a subdural hematoma, a slow bleed in the brain that gradually increased pressure and caused escalating symptoms over the following days. This would explain his progressive paranoia, his confusion, his irrational fears. Combined with possible drug exposure and sleep deprivation, Michael's brain was essentially malfunctioning, creating a terrifying internal reality that drove his final, fatal flight. Yet certain questions remain unanswered, and likely always will. Who were the men in the bathroom? Was Michael truly assaulted, or did something else happen? Was he drugged deliberately, or did he have an adverse reaction to his prescribed medication? Why did he refuse more thorough medical care that might have detected his brain injury? And in his final hours, running through the wetlands, what was he thinking? Did he believe he was escaping danger, or had he lost touch with reality entirely? The case exposed serious security gaps at Miami International Airport, particularly regarding the medical clinic's protocols for psychiatric emergencies and the ease with which someone could jump the perimeter fence. Reforms were implemented, including better coordination between airport medical staff and law, enforcement, and improved fencing in vulnerable areas. Michael Roberts' story also became a cautionary tale about the importance of seeking proper medical care after head injuries, about the dangers of traveling alone while impaired, and about the vulnerability that can emerge when we're far from home and our normal support systems. His case has been used in medical training to illustrate how head injuries can present with psychiatric symptoms and how quickly such injuries can become life-threatening. For Linda and David Roberts, the discovery of their son brought both relief and renewed anguish. They finally could lay Michael to rest, holding a funeral in Portland in February 2019, where hundreds gathered to remember the intelligent, kind young man who had his whole life ahead of him. But they continue to grapple with questions that have no answers, and with the knowledge that their son died alone and afraid. Michael's girlfriend, Sarah, eventually moved forward with her life, though she has spoken publicly about how the experience changed her understanding of mental health and the importance of recognizing when someone needs immediate medical intervention, even if they resist. Michael's friends Jason, Christopher, and Andrew have all expressed lasting guilt about leaving Michael alone in Miami, though investigators made clear that they could not have predicted what would happen. The 17 seconds of security footage that captured Michael's terrified sprint through the airport terminal remains one of the most haunting pieces of surveillance video ever recorded. It serves as a reminder that sometimes the camera captures exactly what happened, but understanding why it happened requires answers we may never have. Michael Roberts' story is not just about a disappearance or a tragic death. It's about how fragile our mental state can be, how quickly things can go wrong, and how important it is to seek help when something doesn't feel right. Today, Michael's case is remembered not only for its tragic ending, but for the lessons it taught about trauma, mental health, and the importance of proper medical care. His family established the Michael Roberts Foundation, which provides support for families of missing persons and funds research into traumatic brain injuries and their psychiatric effects. It's a legacy that ensures Michael's death, while tragic, was not meaningless. The wetlands where Michael was found remain as they were: wild, indifferent, and dangerous to those who enter unprepared. But every year, on July 8th, Michael's family returns to Portland to remember not the terrified young man running through an airport, but the son, friend, and partner who loved the outdoors, who worked hard at his career, and who died too young in circumstances that should never have happened.